About to begin the services for Mr. Robert S. Levin. We want to welcome everyone here in the sanctuary, as well as the people that are viewing from online. If you're present here, just a gentle reminder, if you have a cell phone with you, please place it in a silent mode or turn it off completely. That would be appreciated. Services will be officiated by Rabbi Dror Gold and Cantor Elizabeth Berkey. Following the service here, the interment will take place at Waldheim Jewish Cemetery in Forest Park. And for those of you going in procession, the procession forms south on Pine Grove. And we'll be making sure that your cars are marked with the orange funeral sticker as well as the magnetic flag for your car. And we'll use your bright headlights and your emergency flasher lights at all times while in procession. The Shiva will be Monday and Wednesday from 5 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. at Marianne, Evan, and Rachel Zemil's residence at 2420 West Winona Street in Chicago. And then Shiva will be on Tuesday from 6 to 8 p.m. at Lindsey and Michael Freling's residence, and that is in Algonquin at 541 Lake Plumley Way.
Just unmuted me.
Following the service, we'll be asking the pallbearers to step forward to help escort the casket from the chapel. They will be his brother-in-law, Evan Zemil, his cousins, Michael Goldberg and Stephen Handwerker, and his friends, Craig Glicken and Greg Friedman.
Psalm 121. Shir lemalot, esa einai el heharim, me'ayin yavo Ezri, Ezri, me'im Adonai, oseh shamayim va'aretz, hayitein labnot raglecha, Hayanum shomrecha, hine lo yanum velo yishan, shomer Yisrael. Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha yad yeminecha, yomam hashemesh lo yakeka v'yareach balayla. Adonai yishmorcha mikora, yishmor et nafshecha. Adonai yishmor tzeitcha uvoecha, me'ata v'yad olam. I turn my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, Maker of heaven and earth. Adonai will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. The guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your protection, a guardian at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard you from all harm and guard your life. Adonai guards your going and coming, now and forever. Psalm 23. Adonai roi lo echsar.
Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want.
Binot asher yarbitzeni.
Giving me repose in green meadows.
Al mei menuchot, yenaleni. Nafshi yeshovev.
Leading me beside the still waters to revive my spirit.
Yancheni b'maglei tzedek. Yancheni b'maglei tzedek. למען שמו.
guiding me on the right path, for that is God's essence.
גם כי אלך בגיא צל מוות,
Though I walk through a valley of the shadow of death,
לא אירא רע, כי אתה עמדי.
I fear no harm, for you are with me.
שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני.
Your staff and your rod comfort me.
תערוך לפניי לפניי, שולחן נגד צורריי.
You prepare a banquet for me in the presence of my foes.
דישנת בשמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה.
You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows.
אך טוב בחסד ירדפוני, כל ימי חיי, כל ימי חיי.
Surely goodness and kindness shall be my portion all the days of my life.
ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
And I shall dwell in the house of God forever.
אדוני רואי ואחסר.
Today we gather to honor Bobby Levin, who lived a life that was cut too short. And it pays to acknowledge at the beginning of our time together how hard it is to lose someone when it's a tragedy that takes his life, an accident on a bicycle, and when he's gone so quick, when only days before the people in this room may have been talking to him, learning with him, learning from him, enjoying his laugh and his smile and his humor and the vivacious life that he led, and then quick as that, he's gone. And when we lose someone so suddenly, it tears our heart and the shock sets in. It's hard to even imagine what it is to walk in a world without Bobby. And yet here we are. We don't get to know why. It's not ours to know. What we do know is that Bobby lived a good life, a life in which he touched people's hearts and animals' hearts, a life that he left the world so much better than he found it, which is all any of us can do with the time we're granted. And so we owe to Bobby to say goodbye to him with respect and love, just as he lived his life with respect and with love. A funeral in Hebrew is called a levaya. It's an escortment. We escort Bobby. We walk with him and beside him in his final moments, just as Bobby did that for us. He walked with and beside his friends, his colleagues, his family, and frankly, even strangers who he had just met, giving everything he could. So we'll honor him today with the prayers that we've said and also with words from those who knew him best. We'll be hearing this morning from 3 family members, from his niece Rachel, his brother-in-law Evan, and his sister Marianne. We'll start by hearing first from Bobby's niece, Rachel Zemil.
Good morning, everyone. As you've all probably know, I'm Bob's niece, Rachel. I'm Marianne's daughter as well. So I'll start with my eulogy. When I was around 8 years old, I would ask my mom endless questions about her childhood. Most of her stories involved my Uncle Bob and his various shenanigans. I started to know my uncle as the funny uncle. This is exactly the way I came to know him. He never ceased to make me laugh through my mom's childhood stories or through his own personality. Not only was my uncle the funny uncle, he was also the jack of all trades. My Uncle Bob could probably do anything in my mind. He was an amazing cook, the best at taking care of me when I was sick, the loving doggy daddy with the patience to train almost any dog, and the caring man who just knew how to fundraise for both Paws and the Epilepsy Foundation of Chicago. I firmly believe my Uncle Bob is one of the reasons why I believe in humanity. He was nothing but a great role model for me. He was funny, caring, altruistic, empathic, and always willing to do whatever necessary to help family, friends, people he had just met, and even any kind of animal he could find. I know I will always miss our family dinners at my parents' home, and I will certainly miss my Uncle Bob's infectious smile. I know he is watching me from above, along with my Grandpa Howard, Grandma Sharon, Aunt Linda, and my Uncle Andy. I am most certain that my uncle is still planning on running the upcoming Chicago Marathon while making sure he continues to protect my family from above because he was never willing to give up on anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel, for those beautiful words. We'll invite Bob's brother-in-law, Evan, to share his words.
Hi, everyone. My name is Evan, and I wanted to start when I first met Bob, when I was first dating my wife, Marianne. I met him at her father's 60th birthday party in Deerfield, and I remember him asking me many questions. And he wanted to know what I did on the south side of Chicago, and I told him I was a landlord, and then he wanted to know about collecting rent, and then I told him if they didn't pay, what I would do, that I would beat him up and do all that other neat stuff. And then he turned to Marianne and said, "Who are you dating?" So it went from there. We saw not as much of him over the years until after he got divorced from Dina. And we would see each other, we would get together, we would go walking, he would come over. If he needed help, I would do that. I worked with refugees, and one of them needed help through a friend, and I called Bob. I said, "Would you take these people? Would you take this person in?" And he, at the time, only had a studio apartment. He said, "Sure." He didn't know the person, and they became friends. They didn't keep in contact, but I think it was good for both of them. When we found out Bobby's situation, I called Sam, that was his name, and he drove to the hospital to say his prayers for him, along with his friend who I'm friends with. And he sent me a text, and I wanted to share that with you. Your brother-in-law, to me, let's see here. He would say, Bobby would also say that he was a brother to me. Call bonus here. Sorry. Okay. He received a call from my friend. Okay. That Bobby will always be in my prayers. He was a good and kind person. May his soul rest in peace. And I hadn't seen Sam for a while, but I was just very taken by what he had to say and that how far he drove to see Bobby in his current state. And to me, that was the essence of what Bobby was about, was helping others. Even if he didn't have anything, he would always share or do what he could. And the last time I really saw him was at the epilepsy where he was raising money at the local bar that he always did it at. And it's called the Lighthouse. And he was very happy. And to me, he instilled the essence of what life was about. So anyway, that's it.
Thank you, Evan. We'll invite Marianne, Bob's sister.
Hi, everyone. By now, I'm sure you all know that I'm Marianne, Bob's youngest sister, only 3 years younger than him. Bob, or Bobby, as we called him when we were growing up, was gregarious, friendly, outgoing, generous, but also humble. My 4 siblings and I did lots of things together, and there was always something happening in our neighborhood. Bob had a knack for inviting all the kids from the neighborhood to our house to share his food or dessert or to play in our yard. We were the cool house where all the outdoor games started and where everyone wanted to be. Bobby liked to eat a lot. In fact, he used to always say when we were growing up, "Call me anything you want, but don't call me late for dinner." And if we were late to dinner, you might not get anything because Bobby would have eaten everything up. He and our brother Andy would spend their summers in the kitchen and eat from morning to evening. They once polished off an entire cooked turkey they prepared in one sitting, and on another day, invited friends to eat the 10-pound box of prime steak my dad had received from a client. My father was so angry that he took a padlock to the freezer, a freezer the size of a refrigerator in our basement, the very next day. Bob loved so much food that he was so excited to get a job at KFC in high school. We were excited too, because I remember how we would wait up until midnight when he got home from work, and he would come in with bags and bags of chicken, potatoes, biscuits, and gravy, and everything else he had. Bob has always been a character. He had a knack for doing goofy things or getting into trouble. Some of his antics included jumping off the roof into the snow after the snowstorm of 1979 and almost landing on the air conditioning unit. Another time, he put me in my red wagon when I was about 7, tied the wagon to his bike, and drove around, which went great until I fell out and skinned my entire thigh, earning him a nice talking to from my parents. Another incident was when my parents were having a dinner party, and he decided to rock back in a big chair in the living room. Well, the chair fell through the window and into a bush. Fortunately, he was not hurt, but my parents were not very happy. And then, of course, there were our contests to see who could jump from the highest step from the second floor where all the bedrooms were, and to make sure that you didn't touch another step or fall down. Of course, there was the best of all, which was Bobby's attempt to go down the laundry chute to our basement. He got stuck. Ellen was babysitting, and of course, she didn't want to get in trouble. So I think we had to take some Crisco to help him slide down into the basement. When he was old enough to drive, he would pick me up from my gymnastics practice with one or two of his friends in the car and decide to pull the car over just to give me a tickle torture. Bobby was also an amazing athlete, being one of the fastest players on his hockey team, despite his small size, as tall as me. He would outskate his opponents or even try to skate between their legs. He was a hot dog on skis, and of course, like our dad, he was a runner. The reason that you'll see my daughter and I wearing running shoes in his honor. He ran cross country at Highland Park High School and continued running throughout his adult life, running a total of 74 marathons. This year's Chicago Marathon would have been number 75. Bob always, of course, had a love of animals. Bobby, Linda, and I loved to put our cat Cuddles in a baby buggy and push her around the block. When she passed away, Bobby found a stray and named it Mr. Claus. Unfortunately, Mr. Claus did not stay with us. He ran away. But Bobby not only took in stray animals, he helped anyone he could. When a friend in high school was in need, he convinced our parents to take him in. Louis had come to Highland Park somehow from one of the Caribbean islands, but he was without his family, and my parents let him stay with us. I remember also how cool I thought Bob and Louis were. They were always making jokes and laughing. For college, Bob attended Hamline University in Minnesota, where he lived in a fraternity. He loved being in a fraternity with all the adventures he and his frat brothers had. Fortunately, by his senior year, he ran out of money, so he was forced to finish his undergraduate degree at the University of Illinois in Champaign. Now, as Bob was starting at U of I as a senior, that same year, I was starting as a freshman. Now, you would think that my parents would tell Bobby to look out for his younger sister, but you would be wrong. My parents actually told me, hey, Emet, please keep an eye on Bobby so he doesn't do anything stupid. As an adult, Bob held many positions in sales, and he was good at it, mostly because he had the gift of gab. He sold electronics at Best Buy, shoes at Chernan's, and later as one of the top salesmen in men's shoes at Nordstrom. While working at Nordstrom, Bob began to develop an interest in philanthropy and volunteered as a tutor in the Big Brother, Little Brother mentoring program, helping young kids with homework and study skills. And as it would happen, one of his former students has come today, and I am grateful. Bob also volunteered at Pause and began to run on their team in the Chicago Marathon. He held annual fundraisers for the organization, and as you heard from my husband and my daughter, started to do the same type of thing for the Epilepsy Foundation in my daughter's honor. Bob had a great sense of humor and was always able to put a smile on my face when I was feeling down. I think all of our friends got to know him because he was a standard fixture at all of our parties and celebrations. While Bob may have been guilty of oversharing, he was unpretentious and open about who he was. With Bob, what you saw was what you got. Whatever his flaws might have been, he left this world way too soon. I hope this saying that of the title of the 1989 film, All Dogs Go to Heaven, is true. Because if it is, I know that is exactly where Bob will be. I will miss him every day for the rest of my life. And I thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Marianne. We've come together today to honor the life and the legacy of Bob Levin. Bobby touched so many people. Everywhere he went, he spoke to people's hearts. As his niece Lindsey said, he would give the literal shirt off his back to anyone he encountered. Bobby was what we call in the Jewish tradition a tzaddik, a righteous man. Because he affected so many lives, his loss reverberates throughout the city. The pain of Bobby's absence is felt most acutely by his family. To Bobby's sisters, Marianne Zemil and Ellen Levin, we wish you comfort on this stunning and sudden loss of someone you both loved so fiercely. Of your 5 siblings, only 2 of you remain, far younger than anyone would have anticipated. We know what a tremendous loss this is for both of you. To Bobby's brother-in-law, Emet, and his sister-in-law, Ozzie, we know that Bobby's loss touches you as well. Bobby was a fiercely protective uncle, and so this loss echoes strongly in the hearts of his nieces and nephews, Lindsey and Mike Freling, Rachel Zemil, Jacob Kozer, and Zach Levin. And finally, we wish words of comfort to Dina, who shared so much of life by Bobby's side and remained an important part of his universe even after the relationship ended. Bobby was born in 1962 to Howard Levin and Sharon Levin Pollak. Bobby was the 3rd of the 5 siblings. Ellen and Andy, Zichrono Livracha, were older, and Linda, Zichrono Livracha, and Marianne were younger. Bobby was a joyous presence and a free spirit since he was a small boy. Bobby played hockey and tennis and was a skier. Bobby and Andy shared a room when they were young, and they were thick as thieves, always leading those shenanigans you've heard of and turning their parents' hair gray. Bobby and Andy would jump on their squeaky bunk beds and sneak out the window to pull pranks and get in trouble. And most of all, as Marianne said, to eat. Marianne recalled hiding her leftovers in the snow so that Bobby wouldn't get to them. And if liver and onions were there, forget it. Those were his favorites. Bobby was vivacious and adventurous and a bit ridiculous. Marianne described him as a goof, and Ellen says Bobby was a daredevil. When Bobby was little, he would ring the neighbors' doorbells asking for additional snacks. Mother was mortified. But the thing about Bobby was, even as a boy, he did none of this by himself. He always wanted to share his joy with others. He would invite the whole neighborhood over to share dessert or dad's steaks. In high school, we heard he brought that KFC home to his siblings. Hide and seek and football were played across 4 or 5 yards. And though he was 3 years older than her, he would invite Marianne to hang out with his friends on New Year's Eve, munching popcorn all night. As Ellen said, he made a chaotic childhood more amusing. Bobby would always do something downright silly, like sticking pencils in his ears, just to get his siblings to laugh. Perhaps not a good idea, but funny nevertheless. Bobby was always there for others, and as his siblings say, something I've never heard any sibling say, he was never mean. When Bobby graduated high school and went to Hamlin and then finished with that BA in psychology at U of I, he was extremely social, always surrounded by friends and family. And when he went on to work in sales, what made Bobby successful was that he made people feel heard. He was authentically curious. People could relate to him, and it paid off. People would come back to the store to seek out Bobby for further purchases because he made them feel good. And while Bob was working, he simultaneously got his MBA from the University of Illinois. No small feat. Bob was married twice, to Julie and then to Dina. Dina and Bobby spent many years together, and even after their relationship ended, they continued to care for the ones Bobby would want to make sure we mentioned: his cat Winnie and their 3 pugs, Bella, Lola, and Leo. In his later years, Bob's career took a turn. He became self-employed as a dog handler, a trainer, and a sitter. Those animals brought Bob solace and joy. Bobby was a good friend. He had a wicked sense of humor. He never stopped talking. Bob was an athlete, and he was a good man. And Bobby was driven by values. Values that we see reflected in this week's Torah portion, Ki Tetzeh. The words that we'll read in the Torah this week speak right to the heart of who Bobby was and how Bobby lived. The Torah reads in Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 6, "If along the road you chance upon a bird's nest in any tree or on the ground with fledglings and eggs, and the mother is sitting over the fledglings or on the eggs, don't take the mother with her young. Let the mother go, and only then take the eggs, so that you may fare well and live long." In this strange and enigmatic verse, the Bible teaches us that we can't take eggs from a nest in front of a mother bird's eyes. That mitzvah is called Shiluach HaKan. But why is it so important? Rambam Maimonides, a scholar from medieval Spain, teaches us that Shiluach HaKan shows God's mercy on all animals. Similar to the prohibition against slaughtering a mother in front of her offspring, since animals instinctively love their young and would suffer if they saw them taken away. This verse is the one that our ancestors understood to be one of the paramount verses that teaches us about Tsar Balei Chaim, not to let animals suffer. The cruelty of a mother bird watching her eggs being carted off was too much for our tradition to handle or allow. If anyone lived for the mitzvah of caring for animals, God knows it was Bob Levin. Since Bobby was a small boy, he would bring home lost spiders, injured squirrels, bunnies who lost their burrow to a lawnmower, and yes, baby birds. When a bird fell out of its nest, Bobby scooped her up, fed her, and tried with everything in him to care for her. Bobby loved the lost and broken creatures of God's earth. He couldn't stomach their suffering. Bobby was a lifelong friend to animal kind. For years, he would raise money for paws. And even Bobby's dog, Zelda, who now lives with Lindsey and Mike and will remain there, was saved by Bobby's capacious heart. Bobby knew Zelda wasn't cared for as she deserved, so he literally convinced her owners to allow him to step in and adopt her. Bobby understood Shiluach HaKan, protecting the heart of the mother bird in the deepest part of his soul. But there's a second explanation of that same mitzvah that also speaks to Bobby. Ramban Nachmanides says that shooing away the mother bird isn't about animals, it's about people. He explains that the concern is not for the animal's feelings, but rather to inculcate compassion in people, to accustom people to act mercifully to one another. And if mercy and compassion for your fellow human beings was the goal, boy, did Bobby get that in spades. Bob didn't only bring home broken animals, he brought home people who were lost, abandoned, and unloved, like the young man who Marianne told us about. As Ellen says, he was an unofficial social worker. And as Evan says, whoever had less, Bobby would help them. He was generous far beyond reason. Bob never wanted anything for himself. Who he was as a teenager was also who he was as an adult. When Evan introduced Bob to those Afghan refugees here in Chicago who needed a place to live, he opened his home to them. When I visited Bob in the hospital last week, 2 of those young men had come when Evan called from at least an hour away or more to sit by his side. I've never seen anything like it. Bobby didn't have much, a simple studio apartment, but he shared it nevertheless. Evan read part of Sammy's note, and I'm going to as well. Sammy said, "I will be ever grateful for what he has done for me. He is a good and kind person." From someone who was a total stranger, except you couldn't be a stranger to Bob for very long. It's a rare person who touches so many others. Bobby's compassion was boundless and endless. And perhaps there's one final lesson to draw from the mother bird in this week's Torah portion. Family comes first. The Torah understands that the bond between the mama bird and her young is precious. Family is sacred. Bobby didn't just believe that. He turned it into action. In 4th grade, when the kids at Hebrew school were making fun of Linda and Marianne, Bob was ready to go to the mat to defend them. When his niece Rachel was sick, Bob would babysit so that her parents could work. When Rachel was diagnosed with epilepsy in 2019, Uncle Bobby rolled up his sleeves, turning marathons into fundraisers for Epilepsy Foundation of Chicago. When as a teenager, his niece Lindsey was hospitalized with an autoimmune disorder, Bob would visit at least once a week, sometimes daily, always bringing stuffed animals with him. As Lindsey said, he wanted me to know that I was loved. When Marianne was having surgery or sick in Champaign, it was Bobby who was there by her side, caring for her. Evan, too, describes how Bobby brought him into the circle of family, saying to him, "Evan, you're a brother to me." Ellen describes Bobby as compassionate and empathetic. Even when he did nothing wrong, he would apologize. Because for him, his family happiness was more important than being right. Bobby believed that family was sacred. Bobby Levin was taken from us too soon. He had so much more life to live. But the truth is, Bob lived every day that he was given with grace, humor, compassion, and verve. He made the most of every moment. Bobby lived the values of the Torah. He protected all those mama birds and all their precious babies. Bobby cared for God's broken creatures, animals and humans, with every ounce of energy in him. Bob gave generously. He worked hard. He never complained. He never got angry. He rose to the occasion and kept going. Bobby protected his family, and he put others before himself every time. Bobby let everyone he met know they were loved, they were special, and that he had their back. The world feels darker because Bobby is no longer walking on the earth. But the truth is, the world is brighter because Bobby lived. Bobby lived a grand and generous life. May his light continue to shine. Zecher Tzadik Livracha, may his memory be a blessing. You're invited to rise as we say the memorial prayer for Levin and Bob's.
Rochein mamromim, amse menucha nechona, tachat כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, את נשמת ראובן בן הנר חיים ושולה, שהלך לעולמו בגן עדן, תהא מנוחתו. אנא בעל הרחמים, הסתירהו ברשת כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו, אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר אמן.
O God, full of compassion, thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest beneath the sheltering wings of thy presence, among the holy and pure who shine as the brightness of the firmament, unto the soul of Robert S. Levin, who has gone unto eternity. Lord of mercy, bring him under the cover of thy wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. Be God's possession, and may Bobby's repose be peace. And we can all say, Amen.
Ask the pallbearers to please step forward.